Hi, time for an edition of Simply Stated, and today I'm going to be talking about a few short little topics. This will not be a Simply Stated extra edition, as I really didn't have enough time or even felt like doing one of our viewing scene. I'd have to go find myself someplace indoors, so it was like a closed set that people couldn't enter in order to do the scene version, so not doing that today. But I do have three different topics that I covered really quickly, and I just wanted to get into. And pretty quickly, I don't really want to do a super long show, so hopefully you have time, and I'm thankful to you for taking the time to watch this edition episode. I ended up changing locations again since the last episode was filmed, and anyways, moving right along, I think with sort of appropriate topics. And the big thing I noticed this week was that on top of a lot of the weird drama around the presidential election, which I think most Americans are blowing off, or at least laughing at these days, which is probably good. Around Donald Trump making comments about a bloodbath if he's elected, and he says so many off-the-wall things. I think most people just become really jaded. I was actually kind of freaked out because I thought, well, there's going to be he's not elected, the was having a weird terrorist attack of some kind, because most of the time he's just passing on information from that stupid Russian front group that's been after all these years. It's never really been brought to justice or controlled by the U.S. government, that is based out of Hollywood, which is basically just turned into a bunch of Russian and Chinese CCP, KGB members, and Russian mafia and Iranian mafia people, which is part of the reason that most Americans don't bother to watch the Golden Globes, the Oscars, the Grammys anymore, because it's basically all just them. It's all about them, and it's all them. The material's all stolen, so there's no point even tuning in. But I did notice this week that Candace Owens got fired from the Daily Wire. Candace Owens, Mae Johnson, and Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro runs the Daily Wire, but those three people, Mae Johnson, did a whole show, and the whole thing is supposed to be this big expose, whatever. All three of them come from the same Russian-owned and run management company, which a lot of people don't realize, and none of them are respected by the U.S. government as sources of information. They're supposed to be right-wing pundits. I never went to any actual policy conferences or any events on the Hill or talked to any congressman who had any respect for any of the three of them. And I know Candace Owens is supposed to be really close with Donald Trump, and I'm not ripping on the Republican Party or even Trump supporters. I'm saying she looks way too much like Shonda Rhimes, who was actually my old sorority sister, who's actually Iranian. And I have a bad feeling you're going to find out that Candace Owens is also actually Iranian and not actually black or from the U.S. original law. I think you're going to find out she's another one of these people that pulled up and showed up here literally trained to do extremist rhetoric, because every time I watch her show, Benny's show, even Ben Shapiro's show, everything comes from bizarre, twisted, backwards logic that you only see in people who've been trained by the CCP and the KGB, what's known today as the FSB, or even worse, Iranian brainwashed individuals. And I would not take any of their shows seriously. I know most people don't, but just in case you're sort of pulled into that, even going through YouTube as something to view, I would just simply skip any of their shows material, because that company is not under control yet and still very much trying to control U.S. media. The other thing that's really funny, I have to note for you, it does have a political policy and a military bend to it, is that there's a performer now in the Philippines called Taylor Sheesh. Her entire show is actually a rip on Taylor Swift, and she's more popular than Taylor Swift. She makes a lot of money on her shows, and people really enjoy going to see her. As I noted for you in the Thought Project, just so you know, the Chinese get fairly angry at the Philippines for having new and original performers, because as a communist country, the CCP especially likes to control arts and artists all over the world. The Philippines is one of the nearest countries they can get a hold of and fight with that actually has artistic performers, and that includes their drag queens. So they hate Taylor Sheesh. More evidence of where she's coming from as a performer, because she's definitely not taking trips to Australia. I mean, she's definitely going back and forth to Russia and China a lot more than she is even spending time in the U.S. And most of her performances and shows are actually put together for them. They're really not for U.S. citizenship, other than to put out propaganda that supports the CCP, the KGB, and Iran in their relationship to those two countries. Even if it seems really subtle, it's not. I did talk to at least one Taylor Swiftie in the last month or so, who said she'd finally gotten over Taylor Swift and realized that she was basically just fake. The whole thing with Travis Kelce and the weird shows with all the women, like, she just was really disgusted by all that, completely turned off. I thought, well, that's probably where most Swifties are today in the U.S. if they're paying a lot of attention to what's going on. I think a lot of people really have just moved on mentally because times have become so difficult. There's so much for everyone to think about these days as far as survival. And unfortunately, it is because of this bizarre fight to stop slavery that Russian and Chinese assets in Iran are proliferating and fighting here, even in the U.S., to try to enslave U.S. citizens. And, if you're still confused about all this, I couldn't go to medical school because of it. I couldn't go to nursing school because of it. My nursing school turned out to be a place that was full of too many Russian and Chinese assets, and where they actually asked me to go back to work for free for J-Lo. So J-Lo, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, all run by Buffalo Bill. He also runs Trump's material and works for the Russian front group that's supposed to be based out of Hollywood, that has yet to be brought to justice or even just stopped. And even I can't tell you what's going to happen anymore. I just don't know where any of this is leading. I only know that because I've lived through it and I've survived it as a victim of trafficking and domestic violence, I feel like it's important to inform people. Because I really should be working as a doctor or a nurse today. Really shouldn't even have the time to make these little videos for anyone. But I do anyways. And I need to note for you that I'm a really big fan of RuPaul, whose last show was RuPaul Drag Race to, took RuPaul's Drag Race to Australia or whatever, down under. I watched like some reruns from it from like 2 or 3 years ago before Olivia and John died the other night. It was so great. I was like, oh my gosh, that's like a breath of fresh air. If you want to see like literal drag queens or performers that aren't trying to brainwash you somehow, that's who you look at as an example, which is why I kind of pull back to his stuff sometimes. Because, and swirling back to this, because Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro and Mae Johnson are supposedly these great culture warriors fighting on transgender issues, but they're literally representing a company, or represented and managed by a company that pushes the Russian Chinese asset operations of dressing up as the opposite sex and attacking people, that had men dressed up as women attacking myself and other women and trafficking people that actually do that. So how can Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens authoritatively and respectfully defend any of us when they make all their money off a company that does that for a living? They can't. And frankly, nobody at the Golden Globes who's repped by these companies or the Academy Awards or the Grammys can either. They can't say anything about it because they're just, disgusting and weird and literally out to enslave and traffic anybody they can find and get a hold of for free material, because they're trafficking kids, trafficking organs, and trafficking drugs. They're trying to get away with it in the U.S. So, additionally, there's now a meme going around making fun of Ben Shapiro, saying they can't tell the difference between him and Dermot Mulvaney. You better look quick, because Dermot Mulvaney is run by the same company as him, and it really wouldn't surprise me if it turned out that he actually is Dermot Mulvaney, because that company is that messed up and weird. And they got Bud Light to sign a contract with them after their stock had been devalued some. By the way, they put together a consistent set of series claiming that the U.S. government and the SEC have devalued their company because it's only worth $20 a share. I'm going to tell you right now, $20 a share for that company, too high. I looked up their actual value, and it's really good to keep up with annuities and stocks and insurance, like the people who really know money. The company is only worth 14 cents a share. Okay? So I would say the U.S. government's actually been fairly nice to them by allowing them to keep their value at $20 a share. That's a way overpriced, overvalued company. The other thing I note for you is I actually have run into Patricia Arquette, or the woman who goes by the stage name Patricia Arquette up here in Michigan. She was out trying to stalk me. I had been warned years ago that she was going to go again, so to speak. In her earlier career in the 90s and 2000s, she used my body. I actually was forced as an underage woman, young woman, a 16-year-old, to film parts of the movie Mulholland Falls, and some of the most graphic parts. And I know during the filming I broke character and actually started telling one of the men that I was being trafficked and abused and wasn't paid for the work and was being beaten. And the guy who appeared opposite me in that scene actually broke character as well and started yelling at Wilhelm because he was there to pay me and stop abusing me. And then when he found that I was only 16, got really upset. They end up dragging the guy off the set and killing him. So that actor has actually never appeared in another film. Patricia Arquette knows about this. She knowingly had her face, or her fake face, photoshopped onto my body for those scenes, took the credit and payment for the work. She's an extremely violent, dangerous person, as far as I know, and even the Hollywood set of her mafia can't keep her around as far as their shows because she's actually that out of control. But she's 5'4", she's a size 14, 16, very obviously Chinese, dyes her hair blonde, sometimes auburn colored, and wears contacts. But she's very clearly a short Asian Chinese woman. It's really obvious she's a CCP member who got away with getting herself massively photoshopped. And this is why so many Americans are turned off of and tired of Hollywood, because when they go to meet somebody in person, and the person is literally a 5'4", size 14 to 16 woman, who's very clearly Chinese and not me. You can see I'm 5'8", I have these long proportions, you know, and I'm very clearly a mixture of white and North African ancestry, because I have some Jewish ancestry as North African. It really turns them off. And it also shows that there's really something seriously wrong with that industry, that they're basically dishonest and liars. And so, you know, all this is just to cause you to look up the companies that are making the material, recognize that the U.S. government is very libertarian. They do let China and Russia have companies here, and some of them are media companies that are producing propaganda, essentially. And a lot of it's very insidious and kind of really backwards, like the stuff with Dermot Mulvaney making the really bizarre Budweiser commercials, and then supposedly Lady Gaga came out recently to be really defensive of him and calling everyone hateful for saying anything, when in reality the commercials were actually meant to be really offensive and hurtful to American women, and were aimed at U.S. women and hurting them and their self-image. I know this because for years what I dealt with was seriously well-known Buffalo Bill, and even Kendrick was being called ugly and getting hit and beat up and trafficked and told to work for free. I have my image used, my acting skills used, my singing skills used, writing skills, content, all that. Additionally, and this is where it becomes really tricky, is that later they started going on a big deal about saying that they had spent more time telling me I was pretty. So they were trying to make excuses to U.S. government people saying they were spending time telling me I was attractive and I needed to know how pretty I was. I didn't need to know anything from them. I knew from other people that I was attractive and I was being abused, and that I needed out and away from these sick people. And that's what you need to know. It isn't to say, oh, Hollywood's evil, Hollywood's bad. It's to get you to stop thinking in extremes and start thinking about when you're being represented with, you know, somebody's trying to represent you with propaganda or present propaganda to you, which clearly is designed to benefit the CCP or the KGB and Iranian politics, because the whole situation with them and the trafficking in the U.S. is completely out of control. And you know, I've had discussions with people about it even recently that I thought most of these people would understand by now, because the Department of Labor has taken a strong stance, because DHS has taken a strong stance, because the U.S. military has taken a strong stance, and so have other countries, you know, Australia, England, just not having it, that they would have gotten better by now. But instead, in some ways, I think they become more aggressive, because I've had problems with the same fake friend company trying to abuse me, attack me, even here in the state of Michigan. And it's a little weird. It's a little weird. So anyways, this has been another edition of Simply Stated, and I hope you're all doing well and continue on with my daily life and my pursuit of just finding regular, stable employment and pursuing some of my independent projects as well in the meantime. So take care. Thank you.